So we have a big update for you guys. Our baby Luke, when I was pregnant, had an ultrasound that showed an issue with his brain. It showed an asymmetrical cerebellum. That's really rare. And it really freaked me out at the time. There was more possibility for it to be something very grim than for it to be okay, from what I was reading. We did something called a fetal MRI, which meant that I went into an MRI machine while I was pregnant, and they got a really good view of Luke's whole insides. And when they did that MRI, they were expecting to find less of things. Less brain, less heart, less
structure.
Yeah.
Certain structures might be missing completely.
And the odds were more in favor of less stuff showing up. The miracle that happened was that it was just that asymmetry in his brain that they were really seeing. They also saw his chin looked a little small, but it was right on the fence of if it was like alarmingly small or just, oh, you look like you got a smaller chin like some people in your family, or just what it was. Like it was, that's what they were seeing. So we didn't really know what was going on. We didn't know what to expect when Luke was born. But we did know at that time things were looking a lot better, a lot more hopeful. It just isn't something that you see very often, this asymmetrical cerebellum. So when Luke was born, he then had some feeding issues, but it wasn't something I don't think I would have investigated further.
It didn't seem like a symptom of something.
Yeah. It didn't seem like a symptom of something bigger, and it was only that he'd had that asymmetrical cerebellum that kind of triggered us to be looking for things, to be on the lookout. And so with that and just a few other little tiny things, Luke's pediatrician recommended that we get something called a chromosomal array. I think I'm saying it right. I'm not a scientist. I will do my best to be a scientist in this video, but huge disclaimer that is that I am doing my best to learn this as we move forward with what we know now about Luke.
We're just parents. We're not doctors or scientists or geneticists or anything, anything in that realm. We're learning. We're learning slowly.
And yes, we're trying to do our best, but this is not our specialty. With that, you're testing beyond what they test for in certain chromosome analyses. So when I was pregnant, I did do the chromosome test. When you're like 10 weeks pregnant, they do a blood test now, and they can see markers for like Down syndrome and other big chromosomal differences. I think it's like a list of like 9 or 13 top chromosomal disorders. And we were cleared, like, oh yeah, no, not an issue at all. And in all of my past pregnancies, that wasn't a concern at all either. Fast forward again to Luke being a new baby, our doctor saying, let's do this chromosomal microarray. The chromosomal microarray looks at not just if you have like all of your chromosomes and no extra chromosomes, but it also looks at your specific chromosome, and it looks for deletions and duplications on a much smaller level. So if you take like a line that is one chromosome and you look for little tiny portions that might be missing or might be extra. With something like Down syndrome, it's trisomy 22. So, sorry, oh my God. The deeper I get into this, I'm like, oh, I have to do a whole science lecture. So with chromosomes, every person has 23 chromosomes and an X and a Y or an XX. And you have 2 sets of each of the 23 chromosomes, right?
I don't know, I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, so I believe
I've already given that disclaimer.
Yeah, okay. Except for some people who have a slightly different setup, right? So you might have heard of something called trisomy 22. What that is you have 3 sets of the 22 chromosome instead of 2 sets. So that would be a duplication of of a full chromosome. There's something called Turner syndrome, which only affects females, and it's when one of the X chromosomes is missing or is partially missing. There are these chromosome abnormalities that are seemingly more common because in history we've been able to detect them easier. Science is evolving and we're being able to learn more and see the details of individuals' chromosomes. So they tested Luke, and he is missing a portion of his third chromosome. He has something called 3q29 microdeletion, and it is very rare still, just like the asymmetrical cerebellum. And it turns out that asymmetrical cerebellum is linked to this chromosomal difference. He has a small portion of his third chromosome, right at the very tip of it, is missing. That area involves, I think, like 20 other genes. Those genes are affected by this deletion. The thing that they're studying and trying to learn more about is how they're affected. Since this is such a rare chromosomal disorder, they're still researching it and learning more, and we don't know everything there is to know about it. We kind of don't know everything there is to know about anything in general.
How many cases do they have right now?
Well, the research study that they have on record, I believe, is out of 50 or like 45 people. So all the statistics, all the research that they have that's on record is based off of those 45 or so people. I believe on medical record, they have somewhere between 100 to 200 people total. The good news is that it is being researched. There's a scientist who's researching it right now at Emory University, and we're reaching out to them. And Christopher and I have booked a trip to go out and actually visit Emory University and meet with that scientist in March. And we're gonna go with Luke, and we're gonna go with Bailey. And we're just gonna learn as much as we can, and also try to be involved and help as much as we can in what they're discovering and learning about with this microdeletion. When my pediatrician called and he was like, hey, so we figured it out, I've got some news for you. The number one biggest symptom of this is that 98% people have reported feeding issues in the first year. And 98% of them had feeding problems, things like jaundice, things like low weight gain. And when he told me all this, I was just so grateful to know and to have an idea of what was going on, and that it was all normal for Luke. Like, obviously I wouldn't wish for this to be happening to him, but to know where the bar is for him and to help him reach now like his potential, and to not be worried that he isn't reaching like another person's potential, I just think is so great. I'm just very grateful to know that it's his normal. And
it's nice to be able to like celebrate milestones that he's reaching for himself, as opposed to like you look at his weight on the little chart and it's like he got to the 1 percentile. Like he wasn't there, and then he got to the 1 percentile, but since we knew what was going on with him, we were like, yay, good job, buddy. You know, like,
you're so big.
And with our other kids, we would have worried so much.
Yeah.
I feel like, and we still worry about him, but there's he's hitting different milestones, and as a parent, you're still like, yes, okay, buddy, good job. Like, we're getting there. That's so cool. So
what we do know about him is that it is more likely that he'll be smaller, just overall. He'll just be a smaller guy. Most kids, you'll hear that the milestone for like walking and first words is around 12 months. None of our kids hit that, by the way. All of our kids started walking at 13 months, and Duncan even didn't start walking till 15 months. The predicted outcome for Luke is that he won't be walking or talking potentially till closer to 24 months, so like the 2-year mark. So I'm just grateful to have that information, because we'd be worrying if he was getting, 18 months, 19 months, and he still wasn't doing those things. But now we know, okay, like it's supposed to be a little later. And we know enough that we're now bringing in occupational therapists and a physical therapist. And we've gone to our county services, and he had this full evaluation done, and he was approved so that he'll be beginning to get physical therapy every week and occupational therapy like a couple times a month. And there are things that we know that we can do to help him to reach his potentials. I'm really grateful that we have a diagnosis, because it gives us a direction of where to go to with different specialists. It gives us an idea of what we can expect. One thing is that there's a much higher likelihood of respiratory illness issues in this first year as well, and already, like, that's one thing we noticed about him, like, he's a snorty baby. In talking with our pediatrician, we were like, okay, so like, what do we do? Is there anything we need to be extra cautious about, or like, what do you recommend? And he said that for him, the main thing is just that if one of our kids were to be sick, he would say, okay, we'll just like wait it out. You can recover, like you can do this on your own. Your kids can fight this off. So with Luke, he might be quicker to do a steroid treatment or like a nebulizer sooner than he would for another kid. I just overall feel relieved that it isn't anything bigger. And I know that there's this reality that there's a lot of stuff also going on, and there are a lot of challenges that we'll be facing potentially, and he'll be facing. But I also feel like he's beaten so many major odds that I don't know. I guess I'm just really proud of him. I think he's doing a really good job, and I don't know. I'm really grateful that nothing's worse. There's still lots of potentials for outcomes and for things he's facing, and there's also the possibility that there won't be that much at all. We're seeing a lot of good things from him already. His body seems pretty strong.
Yeah, that was the first thing they told us about the cerebellum before they knew about the deletion, was that like his body tone was going to be pretty
like
weak.
Mushy.
And he lifts his head up and does all these facial expressions. He's grabbing at toys and stuff. He's doing well.
From what I'm reading from other people's experiences, I think it's likely that we'll have feeding issues with him.
Beyond breastfeeding, like actually eating food, solid food.
So they say that can be really difficult to, like, the chewing and swallowing and gastro things. Like, you know, if you've watched our videos before, you may have heard me talk about how he's colicky and stuff, and he has reflux issues. That is more connected with the chromosomal stuff than it is with him just being a baby, because that stuff happens when you're just a baby too. But I think he actually has some stuff internally, like either low muscle tone for the valves or something. I do think that asymmetry in his cerebellum carries throughout, so you can kind of see his face is a little bit more asymmetrical, and I think internally there's a chance, this is just mom talk, like this is just my instinct, I think he has some asymmetry internally that's kind of throwing things
even
off.
In the way he like strains when he's trying to like go to the restroom or whatever, like internally, like here it seems like
his stomach will bulge out
than the other.
His stomach kind of bulges out on one side more so. His neck was to the side and really stuck there, and we've been taking him to a chiropractor who's been helping him a lot. So they're just little things that I haven't talked about in detail that have been going on that make us kind of aware of the fact that there's this asymmetry going on. It's not super defined. I think you guys are probably going to have a lot of questions for us. I understand. I have a lot of questions too. There's this big reality that we don't have the answers for everything. And even if we did have the answers for like what happens with this condition,
what the typical thing is.
Yeah, Luke is still an individual, and all individuals are going to present in their own ways, on their own timelines.
And there's such a small pool of people that they're getting information from too. So like he could be a variant that's like completely different that they just haven't found yet, because there's only like 60 people, like you said, that they're studying.
Yeah, because you have to be a certain age for research studies. So one question you might have is, are we going to put him in one of the studies right now? He's not old enough to enter. So that might be something that he does down the line. I really do hope that part of all of this is about raising awareness, both for the chromosomal abnormality that Luke has and for those micro abnormalities in general. And I don't like the word abnormality, just so you know, like I feel like that's the technical term, but I hope you guys know that we don't think that humans that have this are abnormal.
I've also seen it described as a disorder as well.
Yeah, disorder, I don't know.
We're not sure what to call it, because like we don't.
This is one of the reasons why I've been hesitant to even make this video, because I don't want to use verbiage that then offends someone or makes somebody think that we think anybody, like I know some
Can we call it a uniqueness?
No. Well, I've also seen, I've seen somebody say a difference, and then someone, it was just on another social media platform, they were like, don't say difference. It is an abnormality. I have it and that's fine. It is what it is. And they were fine with that. So like, I know different people have different opinions of how words affect them. I just want you guys to know that our hearts are in a good spot and really are like, have full love for people that are dealing with their bodies just being different. We're all different. And this just happens to be what's going on with Luke. He has a little bit less of one of his chromosomes.
And we as people like really celebrate everyone's differences.
Yes.
What makes them unique, what they bring to the world is wonderful.
So it's funny, but that's been one of my hang-ups.
It's something we've been stressed about a little bit.
One question you might be asking is whether this was passed down from me and Christopher. What they know of the chromosomal abnormality is that it supposedly doesn't typically pass down. Sometimes somebody will have it and not know, and then can pass down to family members. It's not the majority, but the more I've been researching it, the more I'm seeing families with it emerging. So I think it is a possibility, and we're beginning to do some testing as well. It's not likely that it's being passed down from either of us. It's also not considered to be related to anything having to do with our age or anything that we could have done differently. It just is. I have a sleeping baby. Sweetheart. I love him so much.
Me too.
He's so wonderful and so perfect. And aside from the fact that any of this could cause him pain someday or now with his discomfort, like, I wouldn't wish him to be any other way. I think one thing related to the feeding is I think that there are some things going on with his jaw or his mouth just structurally that contributes to the difficulty with feeding. I read that he could have some teeth differences when his teeth come in. Right away, you know, we had the lip tie, tongue tie, cheeks were too tight and we had them clipped. He also does this thing where when he's nursing sometimes, milk actually comes out through his nose. So there's a possibility that something's going on structurally that's contributing to that. So I feel like a lot of what's going on with Luke will be kind of researching and following up as it's happening. We have a better idea of what to expect now, but we also don't really know anything. Like, big secret is that parents are actually pretty clueless and they're all just doing their best. So that's where we're at with Luke.
And I'm happy he was our 5th kid too, because I feel like having an understanding of like what our other kids are like and what to be really worried about and what not, like it puts it in perspective. And also have the kids help with certain things has been really great.
Just knowing what's a typical baby thing and what's something to be like, okay, let's look a little deeper into that. If he was our first, a lot would have gone unnoticed because really,
or gone on our conscience too, like, oh, we've done something wrong, or like you see other parents and they act like, oh, well, you just do this, and you feel
like,
that as a new
parent. Why is mine crying all the time?
Yeah, you feel that as a new parent, but to have had other kids and know like what to look for, it's been helpful a lot.
Yeah, we'll be updating you guys, and we'll try to talk with you too, because I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions. I'm not guaranteeing any answers. We are not guaranteed any answers. We don't know what to expect, but I want to talk about it and
bring awareness to it for sure.
Yeah, bring awareness to it. I feel like I've learned so much. I'm really grateful that science has gotten to this point and that we were able to get this diagnosed, and as soon as it was diagnosed.
And we've had such good doctors and medical support throughout the whole process, like in the hospital, his pediatrician, the ear, nose, and throat doctor, every expert that we've like gone to has been very helpful and really inquisitive. And that's another thing. I'm glad that we've gone through as many kids as we have, because we realized like what kind of doctor we work best with and what to look for in a pediatrician, and because we've had some not so good ones. Yeah. And the one that we have now is really great, and he really like was attentive and was thorough and found this.
And he was the one that was like, you should do this microarray thing and check his chromosomes, and we were like, I haven't heard of that. Like when we had Bailey and Jacob, it was just beginning to exist, And I don't think it was like covered with insurance the same way. Like it was a much less common test. And now it's much more common and accessible, and our insurance did cover a portion of it.
Also, in line with that, how long ago did they discover this microdeletion?
I believe
recent,
it was
right?
2006 was the actual discovery of the microdeletion.
So recent.
Yeah.
Like medically, that is so recent.
Bailey was born in 2007. It existed before then, but that was the first time they were able to even tell that it existed. My doctor said when he called me, like, oh, feeding issues 98%. He said something called global developmental delay, which can include like this speech and I think the physical stuff was really high up there as well. And he was listing all these things, and I was just like, I am so grateful to know this. Like, as someone who's parented a bunch of kids and had a lot of question mark things going on with my various children, like, gosh, why is that happening? What's going on? Let's check out this therapist and talk to this doctor and like go to this specialist. And it was the figuring it out can sometimes be extremely hard. Knowing now kind of the root of a lot of things that we might need to figure out later, it just is such a relief, I think, and so helpful. Like, I don't think that we would have been approved for the physical therapist and occupational therapist had we not had this diagnosis. In some ways, he presents just like every other baby, where these parents are going, no, he's crying all the time. I can see him straining and having difficulty with this. And a lot of doctors might go, yeah, that's colic, and just move on with it. But we're able to go, no, there's a little bit more to it, and like it's this, and they're like, the physical therapists were like, oh yeah, I do see that now. And they're like testing his legs a little bit more and just being a little bit more attentive than I think if we hadn't had a diagnosis, which I know is a really sad observation, but as a parent, I feel like it's true.
It gives us an opportunity to address struggles that he might have in the future now before they develop further. Like the minor things that we can do now are going to help him develop better. Yeah, like tying his shoes and potty training and all those things he might have difficulty with, but we're hoping that we can help him as much as we can now so that it's not as difficult. He needs the help now, but I feel like that would be hard to prove if we didn't have the diagnosis. And I just want to say thank you guys so much for all your support and prayers during the times when we were getting little trickles of information and we were sharing it with you. We're really grateful for your support and
stories, just the most amazing stories about working through differences, either your own or family members or a friend's. Just the most incredible, inspirational stories and words of encouragement and prayers. And just thank you guys. Thank you. I read through every one of those, even at times when it was emotionally very difficult for me to put out responses and really engage in conversation. I want you to know, like, that meant the world to me. That was my hardest point. I think that was my most worried and most scared, was back when we first got that initial ultrasound, and the comments on that video are just incredible. I feel like so much weight has been lifted, not just from the diagnosis, but I think from you guys and from your prayers. Like, I just feel this peace. Like, even just knowing, like, okay, there's gonna be stuff. Like, the doctor called and was like, this is the diagnosis, and I was like, okay, thank you. Like, I just was at peace. I hope through all of this we can really get the word out about rare chromosome disorders. They say Luke's is, the estimate is in between 1 in 30,000 to 1 in 40,000 individuals have it, even if it hasn't been diagnosed. They did some study in Iceland where they tested everybody and that was the amount of people that had it. Like, that's why that statistic is there.
Percentage. A
lot of people are probably gonna say, like, well, just a lot of people haven't had that test, so probably more people have it than you think. That's true, more people have it than are diagnosed for sure. The odds are still assumed to be 1 in 30,000 to 1 in 40,000 people. But there are some deletions and duplications that are more common that we still don't know about. So I'm hoping that we can raise awareness in general for those microdeletions, for getting these chromosomal microarray tests done. And by the way, all it took was a swab in his cheek. Like, it wasn't a shot. It wasn't anything like heavily invasive, and that's where we're at. So thank you for joining us on this journey, and we will keep you updated on Luke's development and how we're doing as a family, which is generally great. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
We're good.